I think one of the oldest and most misunderstood features in Betaflight and iNav is in-flight RC adjustments, or just the adjustments tab as it's called now. I've been doing some coding work to add the sliders for the adjustments so you can adjust the sliders on the fly. I've learned a lot through the process, and in today's video we're going to go ahead and share what I've learned, because this is a really powerful tool that is, I think, really underutilized. And then at the end, I'm going to go through some of the enhancements I've made to this tab to make it a little more user-friendly and easy to use and understand, and also some of the features I'm adding to it so you can adjust the sliders on the fly. I'll drop a link to this site down in the video description. This is the Betaflight. It's not really the wiki anymore, but it's the Betaflight help page on in-flight adjustments. So everything I'm going to go through in this video will be on this page for documentation. We'll just go through it and give you some examples and kind of try to clarify some of the things that are outlined in this page if you take the time to read it, but most people won't. So the first thing, let's go through the basics. What are adjustments used for? They're called adjustments now, but they used to be called in-flight adjustments, and they're used just for that. It's to make in-flight adjustments to variables and selections on your quadcopter. So you can literally change things as you're flying. You can change your rates, you can change Expo, you can change Throttle Expo, you can change what OSD profile you're using, all kinds of things. And you use this dialog box behind me to get it all set up. In setting up RC adjustments, it's really important to understand there's three primary types. First of all, there is selection adjustments. Now, selection adjustments are used to select things like your PID profile 1, 2, or 3, or rate profile 1, 2, or 3, or OSD profile 1, 2, or 3. Now for those, you're typically going to use a radio with a 3-position switch, or you can use a 2-position switch as well, but the best is a 3-position switch, and then you'd have the default that switch is at either one, the high, middle, or low, and then based on that, you're going to select profile, rate profile, PID profile, OSD profile, whatever you select over here is, 1, middle position 2, bottom position 3. Now there is an inherent limitation. If you only have a 3-position switch, you can only make 3 different selections. Even with a switch that has like more positions, again, you're only really going to get 3 selections out of it. That's kind of hard coded into it based on what I've seen so far. Now the next adjustment type is going to be the stepped adjustment. Now in the stepped adjustment, you're going to pick a variable, and then that variable, whatever it is, you can again use a 3-position switch or a potentiometer, and you're going to move that variable up or down. Again, you can use that for whatever you can select over here for the different types of elements or variables that you can change. One good thing is there's no limit, so you can move it all the way up. You could move a PID value from 15 all the way up to 255. That's the max a PID can go. The full range of any of the different items. The downside of it is it takes a little bit of time. Like the stepped adjustment is not fast, and that's by design. It's not meant to be fast, so you don't just ramp up your PIDs or some other variable you selected really too quick. It's intentionally slow. But luckily, if that's an issue for you, there's another adjustment that you can use, and that is going to be the absolute adjustment. Now in the absolute adjustment, what you can do is you need to set some other variables that aren't even on this screen here. And I think that's why it's not really utilized, and I think it's the most underutilized feature of RC adjustments. And I think it's honestly the most powerful when you get it set up. And with that, you can either use a switch or, more apt, a potentiometer, and you can set any of the variables. You can set the center position, and then you can set the full range. So for example, you could set your throttle expo and then use your potentiometer to go 0 throttle expo all the way up to 1 for a throttle expo, which is 100, and just have that on a potentiometer and adjust it wherever you are at. So you flip it in like you're going to go into that adjustment mode, and then you can adjust your throttle expo. You can do that with PID gains. You can say, hey, my PID value is going to be 50, and I want to have a range of, I want to be able to swing that 25 either way. So go down to 25 for a PID value, go up to 75 for a PID value. Again, you can put that on a potentiometer and adjust that up and down. You could do that with your rates. You could say, hey, I want to start to try to fly some different rates, and say I'm going to put in my rate of 700 feet per second, and then I want to be able to move that up to 1,000 feet per second for a rate, or down to 500 feet per second for a rate. And then again, you can put that on a potentiometer. So the absolute adjustment, I think, is really powerful because you just know what you've set it to. It's not this thing that it's stepping up or stepping down, and it's takes a while. Here you can quickly just, as fast as you can spin a potentiometer, you can go up or down. You can also do things that are absolute adjustment that are by default, like you can adjust your dimmable LEDs, so you can make the LED brightness or go up or down. There's just a lot of things you can do with in-flight adjustments to adjust a bunch of stuff as you're flying. Now, the final adjustment type is going to be relative, and this is not in Betaflight as of right now. It's going to be in the 2026-06, I think, release coming up this summer. And that's some of the stuff I've been working on adding. And that's going to be mostly used with sliders. So wherever you flip into the adjustment mode, then you can use a potentiometer and slide the slider up from there or down from there. It's not absolute. So on absolutes, if you have the switch off, like you're not making an adjustment, and you move the pot, and then you flip the switch on for the adjustment, it is going to snap to that new absolute adjustment. It's basically mapping your potentiometer or any of your, the flight controller can't tell that you're using a potentiometer. All it knows is that you have a signal from 1,000 microseconds to 2,000 microseconds. It doesn't know if it's on a pot or a switch or a 3-position switch or an 8-position switch. It doesn't know. So I'm just using a pot in this example, but everything I talk about is a pot. You could have on a switch or multiple switches or buttons along some of the radios that are out there nowadays. So anyways, the relative one, it's a little different from the absolute, as again, wherever you switch into the mode, into like, hey, I'm going to make an adjustment, then your pot or switches are relative from that position. So it just doesn't snap the slider to, say you move the pot in between, you're out, you're not making adjustments, and you move the slider. When you snap back in, it just doesn't snap it to that. It says, hey, that's the new center position of the pot, or whatever, and then you're going to, kind of move it from that location. So again, that's a new relative mode that's going to be coming up in future releases of Betaflight. That's actually already in the master branch of Betaflight if you want to go check that out. So let's look at these in a little bit more detail so I can show you some examples of how really useful this can be with the absolute adjustment or in the future the relative. Now, one of the things that you need to be aware of that is not, apparent just by using the graphical user interface is there's this center position and scale that you can do for each in-flight adjustment that you need to do to actually use the absolute adjustment methodology in the adjustments. And it's not on this page, the center and scale. I don't know why it's not on this. It should be. I can't believe it wasn't there. I didn't even know about this because it's not on this page. And you can see, and I've added it actually in the master branch of the Betaflight now. It's on the configurator now in the master. But yeah, I added it over 2 more columns that are going to be added over here. So that will look like this if you go to the master branch. And you can see over here there is a with center value and a range and or scale, it's a value or percent, that you can adjust here. So each of these different adjustments that you might set up, you can, again, assign that center and range, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. Now, again, that is in the master branch, but if you're not using the latest Betaflight master branch, which you could use right now. So right now, if you're using the stable releases of Betaflight, to access these variables, the center and range or scale, you need to go into the CLI. And if you type ADJ range, that gives you the adjustment ranges, the in-flight adjustments here. And you can see here, these, if you look at what this stuff is, and then you look at that adjustments GUI page, this is them basically stepping across the top. Basically, this is the adjustment, which adjustment, so adjustment 0 is 1, 1 is 2, 2 is 3, so on and so forth. This is the aux switch, so this is like it's active or not. This is the aux switch it's using. This is the range that aux switch needs to be in. This is the actual function, and this is the aux switch that's going to actually make that function, whatever you're selecting, go up, down, or whatever it is. But then there's these 2 extra variables, which is adjustment center and adjustment range. So you can actually adjust these now. So if you wanted to, say I wanted to come into here and I wanted to copy this and I pasted it down here, and then I would put 50 here. I would just type in 50, hit enter, and then type save. That will change that adjustment range, which is that last number, to 50 instead of 25. So using the enhancements I added to Betaflight 2026 and the master branch of the configurator, which will be coming out this summer and stable, you can see here now there's that 50 and the 50 for scale. This was 25, now we changed that to 50. And you can see how this kind of steps apart. So let's just use this a little bit for the rest of the explanation. So in there, just the basics of in-flight adjustments. The first thing is you have all these adjustment things that you can set up. First, you have to enable whichever you want to enable. So we're going to go ahead and enable this one. Then we're going to say, hey, when aux3, whatever you have for aux3, 3-position switch or whatever you have, when it falls within this range, which you can set. So we're going to say when aux3 is in the middle, we're going to adjust our RC rate adjustment. And we're going to adjust that using aux8. So this would be the aux that you have. I use pots a lot, potentiometers, to do this stuff. I think it's the best. But you can use the, new radios have multifunction buttons on the 8. There's like up to 8 slots. You can use a 3-position switch. You can use really whatever. Again, your transmitter sends 1,000 to 2,000 microsecond signals. It doesn't know what the switch type is. It doesn't care. It's just using that that position of that 1,000, 2,000 microseconds to make the adjustment. And then for older versions of Betaflight, you'd have to go into the CLI if you wanted to set the center and scale. And the newer versions, once this comes out, it will be right here. So we can say, okay, we're going to set the center at 50. Say this is a PID value. So say, for example, we're going to say, okay, we're going to make an adjustment to my pitch and roll P gain. So it's going to adjust pitch and roll P gain. And we're going to say the center when in this example, when the potentiometer is set to 0, then it's going to be at 50. So when its potentiometer is at 1500, that's going to be at 50. And when I move the potentiometer to 2000 microseconds, it's going to let that go up by 50. So that would go up to 100, or down by 50. So your P would go down to 0, which would be bad. Don't do that. And that's going to make a live adjustment. So that's an important thing to just recognize again as you're doing this. These adjustments are real time. So as you adjust these PIDs, if you go down to 0, you are going to lose control of the flight controller or the quad, because 0 PIDs means it's not putting out any signal to adjust the motors. And on P gain, it's just going to be like a dead noodle. The motor, you'll be able to adjust the throttle, but that's about it. You won't be able to do left and right or anything like that. I guess you have the I gain to give some influence. Anyways, so that's how to adjust. And you can then, of course, change this. Again, in older versions, you have to go into the CLI to do it. Here, you could just change this to if you only have a range of 25, so on and so forth. So for things you can adjust, you can see in here, feed forward transition. I don't think that's too useful. Horizon strength adjustment, that's actually not what that is. It actually adjusts the horizon, like where it breaks over to do the flip or the roll in horizon. So I'm going to put in a PR to fix that. But this LED brightness adjustment, that works, and that is on absolute all the time. So you don't have to set up this center scale or a range. That's just mapped to your pot, so you can make your LEDs brighter or dimmer. I'm sure that would be useful for like a racing format at night, things of that nature. LED selection, so there's different LED selection profiles. So again, that's a 3-position switch. There's an OSG selection, again, that's a 3-position switch. PID audio selection, again, 3-position switch. And we talked about already, you can use this pitch and roll D gain adjustment, F, I, blah, blah, blah. So this is going to do pitch and roll. You can use that either in the stepped adjustment format, or you can use that in the absolute adjustment format, which I talked about in length just a little bit ago. But to use it in absolute adjustment format, in old versions of Betaflight, or the current version, you have to go into the CLI and set this center and scale. And I don't think anybody really knew that, unless I bet most people didn't know that. So they didn't even know that was a thing. But you have to go into the CLI to set those, and which you can do right now. And in the future, it'll be a little easier because it'll be right there in front of you. Again, this is D pitch, pitch, feed forward, just that one axis versus both axes. You can do your You can adjust your pitch roll rate, what I'm going to talk about here in a little bit of future, because there's a little bit of stuff you need to know there for this. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. You can do your rate profile selection. So you'd have different rate profiles that you could switch between on the fly. You can adjust your RC Expo. You can adjust your RC rate. So this is going to do pitch and roll for both of these. And then you can do your RC yaw. So this would just be yaw. So you have one that's pitch and roll together. And then this is just, you have RC yaw. There's no one for RC yaw Expo. That just doesn't exist there. It could be added fairly easily, but it doesn't exist there. Then you got the rolls, all the PIDs on the rolls, the roll rate. So it's just the roll, where this is roll and pitch here. Here's the one I added recently. It's in the master branch, the master slider. You can move that up and down using the relative method for making that adjustment. The Throttle Expo, that's that sponginess you can get in your throttle. My son's actually flying some whoops right now, so that's kind of handy that you can set that and kind of adjust that and tweak that up and down. So that's pretty cool, but to me, you really need to use the absolute method. So we're going to talk about that here in a second. There is the yaw stuff, yaw pitch roll rate, and then there's the yaw rate adjustment. So with these, I would say the handy ones that I think are probably underutilized that people might be interested in checking out is the Throttle Expo. I think that's pretty cool. And then also all these rate profile adjustments by using the absolute, I think could be pretty handy to check out just different, how do you like flying with different rates, like 1,000 feet per second flip roll rate, or 600 feet per second, or hey, I flip a lot between racing and non-racing. So you could do different rate profiles, so have a racing one and a non-racing one, and then use the RC adjustments here to flip in between those. So if you forget, you can just do it on the fly. Or you could just say, hey, well, they're pretty much the same. I just kind of turn down my roll rate and pitch rate for racing. You could just put that on a absolute and put it on a potentiometer and slide it down. Obviously, in the future, I think it's going to be really handy to be able to adjust, for example, your master multiplier slider on a pot and move that up or move that down based on air density for that day, or people that fly professionally. And when you change altitude, you have to adjust a lot of times. So yeah, there's more to come on that, but there's a lot of handiness in being able to adjust master multiplier and other sliders well on the fly. But with this, let's look at this Throttle Expo right now. I'll give you a little example of that. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, hey, when I enable aux3, which is going to be this switch right here on my radio, then it's going to enter the adjustment. So when aux3 is in that position right there, I'm going to enter the adjustment. I'm going to adjust Throttle Expo. So let's go up to or down to Throttle Expo right here, pick that. And then I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to use my potentiometer right here. This one right here. It has a little center detent. It's kind of nice. I can keep my hand here low. Hopefully you can see it. And with that, when I move that up or down, it's going to either do a stepped adjustment or an absolute. Stepped is not that useful, in my opinion. Absolute, super useful. So throttle adjustment there. That pot happens to be, for me, aux8. And you can check that kind of stuff by going into the receivers tab on your radio. And just move the pot around and see which aux moves around. It's pretty straightforward. Let's first look at stepped adjustment. So let's set these to 0. And I'll put this 0 and then 0 here. Now, again, if you're in the current release of Betaflight or any older releases, you have to go into the CLI and adjust those. So I'll show you here right second what that looks like. So if I go here, hit save, and then I go down to the CLI and then just type in 80J range, and you can see here what that looks like in that row for setup. So everything we just did for that number 1 adjustment, which is adjustment 0, because programmers start with 0, that's how it looks here. That center and scale are these 2 variables right here. So let's go into my Throttle Expo and see how that works. So right now it is set to, let's just say it's set to 0.5. And you can test this on your own. You don't have to go and fly. All you have to do is I'm going to go ahead and enter into my RC adjustment. So now I'm, my RC adjustment's active. I can see that by going here and seeing that it's active. And if I go back to that and go into my rates profile tab, and if I just hit refresh on the configurator, you can see that nothing's changing. The reason nothing's changing is because my pot is centered. So the signal is 1500. So if I would have picked a different switch, so say I would have picked this 3-position switch, I'd have to make sure that that's centered for this to not adjust. Although if that 3-position switch isn't centered, isn't at 1500, that means as soon as I switched into the adjustment, it will start going up or down with the stepped adjustment. So that's why I really like pots for this kind of stuff, because they're typically, I don't know about everybody else, but they're typically centered. My 3-position switches, usually I have them all away from me. Some people have them all towards them, but nevertheless. So it's centered, didn't adjust, and I can actually see things. So if I go ahead and move this pot all the way up, you can hopefully see the little notch there. You can test to see it doing its thing, like just by hitting refresh. And you can see each time I hit refresh, you can see it just slowly moving up. And that will keep moving up until it gets to its top value, and then it will stop. Obviously, I can stop it anywhere in between if I set that back down to, or just set that to the middle detemp position on the pot. You can see it stopped moving, and you can just test it here by hitting refresh on your configurator page there. So I'm going to go ahead and move that up, and you can see it's moving all the way up to the position, to the max it can go, which is 1, and it will just sit there. Likewise, if I wanted to bring that back down, I can go ahead and move that pot back down. I should probably grab it this way, move that pot back down, and then you can start to see it starts stepping down. But it's slowly doing it, right? It's just, and there's not an OSD element for this thing. So you really don't know where it's at unless we create an OSD element for it. And you'd have to have an OSD element for like everything. Luckily, the rates have OSD elements, but all this other stuff, most of it doesn't. PIDs do, rates do, but not like this and horizon strength and all that other kind of stuff. It doesn't have an OSD element. So you can see it steps down through. That's all good. I can set this back to the center detent, and then it stops. Obviously, if I enter out or come out of the adjustment, then if I move this up or down, it doesn't matter. Now, if I can just hit refresh here, and you can see it just doesn't move this at all. So that's all good, and that's how that works. But let's talk about how to set that with the center and range. So in a lot of these variables for adjustment, they are working on this you can see here this scale. It's like 0 to 1. So it's like, think of that as like 0 to 100. So whenever you see a 0 to 1 adjustment, like Throttle Expo, RC Rate here, RC Expo, any of this stuff, and that's in the normal Betaflight stuff. Any of these are that way. Any of like this feed forward transition, that's here. That's also a 0 to 1 variable. So that's like 0 to 100. So think of 0, whenever you see a point, whatever it's like an adjustment that's point something, think of that as like 0 to 100. So in the adjustments, you don't have, and even in the CLI, you can't enter a 0.5 for the center value, right? You have to it has to be an integer. That's just how it works. It's coded in for a lot of reasons. It's that way, and it needs to stay that way. I won't go into all the details. However, it can be an integer value. So for 0.5, it would be 50, right? And to activate using absolute method, you have to set a center and you have to set a range. Well, if 50 is my center of my pot right here, and I want to have full range down to 0 and then up to 1, well, then I set my scale, my range here, to 50 as well. Now, if I set this to 25, or if I set the scale to 25, that means when I move this all the way up, I will only go up to 75 or 0.75. If I move this down all the way, it will go to 0.25 or 25. So you can see how you can use the scale here, or that range, and just kind of convert between the decimal point versus an integer type of value, 0 to 100. Again, these values in current Betaflight, you don't have this little graphic user interface. You can just do it in CLI. Type in adjust range, paste the thing, put in the new values, hit enter, and save that. So we're going to set 50 and 50. And we're going to go down here, all the way down, and we'll hit save. Now let's go back into the tuning page here and back into the rate settings. And then let's go ahead and enter that RC adjustment. Now I entered it and I'm going to hit refresh. And you can see, since now I have the absolute method, soon as I entered the adjustment here, it automatically snapped to 50 essentially. And this pot's not perfectly centered. So if I move that a little bit, you can see it's hard to get it perfectly at 0.5, but these things aren't that sensitive. So that's why you'll see a little bit of variation there. But it's snapped to that. If I come out of the adjustment and I move this pot all the way to the top, I hit refresh here. I'm not in the adjustment. See, it's still saying the same. But then I enter the adjustment. So I'm back into the adjustment now. You can see it snapped to 1 right there. So this is the absolute method. So wherever you have your pot, as long as you're in the adjustment, and you can move it real time. So if I move this down, hit refresh, you can see now it's at 0.93. Move it down a little bit more, hit refresh. Now I'm at 0.66. And maybe I go down to here. Maybe I'm down to I'm almost at 0 at that point. So I can come up to here a little bit. And then you can see here I'm at 0.26 here. So I think this type of thing, like Throttle Expo, in my humble opinion, is much more useful for an RC adjustment when it's on the absolute, because then you kind of have, you know, that when my pot's all the way over here, it's at 0. When my pot's all the way over here, it's at 1. If I'm in the range, if I'm in the active adjustment, which could be the whole range, right? You could come into here and say, hey, look at aux 2 or aux 3 and make it the whole thing. So it's always active. Because this aux, doesn't matter where it's at, it's always active. And then this pot just controls your Throttle Expo or whatever else, dimming, whatever else you want to control. We have all this stuff in here that you can control. And you know that the pot, you know, you just kind of memorize that the pot is, you know, what it's for. And you know, hey, if this is all the way down, this is all the way up, and I can have this real-time adjustable Throttle Expo and play around with it. See what you like, see what you don't like, so on and so forth. You can do that for rates, all kinds of stuff. So to me, that absolute adjustment and knowing about these center and range things, that really unlocks the usefulness of in-flight adjustments. In addition, the legacy usefulness of it, I think the sliders are really, really going to make a big difference too, but that's in the future. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful in fully understanding adjustments or in-flight adjustments for Betaflight, and all this same stuff is how it works for iNav as well, or CleanFlight if you're still flying CleanFlight. So if you have any questions in addition to this, don't hesitate to drop them down below. If you have any suggestions on what you'd like to see added to in-flight adjustments, drop those down below as well. Like I said, I've been doing a lot of work on it recently, and one is, if you ever did any contribution to Betaflight, once you get into a thing, that rabbit hole, you start to figure out how deep that rabbit hole goes. So this is all at the forefront. Wouldn't be too hard to add other things. So yeah, drop those down below, take a look at it, and see if it's a good suggestion and go in, or you can do it too. Anybody can contribute to Betaflight, and that's the power of open source. Anyways, thanks everybody. Hope this helps. See you on the next one.